few questions of my own first. One thing that I noticed in both of your presentations were that none of you are technology neutral. We had very specific, including you went all the way down to the specific sugar beet, and you have specific incentives for different kinds of renewables. And in the Swedish, and I think in all of the Nordic discussions, we always hear that politics and policy should be technology neutral. Why not?
Well,
yes.
Sorry. We used to be, okay, we were never completely technology neutral because one of the driver was, of course, we wanted to exit nuclear power. That was always a given. Otherwise, when we started feed-in tariffs in 2000, it was, besides nuclear, it was energy technology neutral. You could build whatever plant you wanted and then feed it into the grid as long as it was renewable. And Germany does not consider nuclear renewable and not clean, but we would use it as sustainable and then exclude it. Everything we saw over the period since 2000 until 2014, when we first reformed the system, that basically the biggest chance, the biggest success were in these three areas, particularly in wind, on and offshore, and in photovoltaic. And biomass, was already successful. We are around about 8–9% biomass, and we believe there's maybe 1 or 2 or 3% more as a potential, but then there will be, we would have to start importing biomass, which would be, of course, not in the aim. So that's why then with 2014, the reform, we said, okay, then let's focus on the wind and photovoltaic and to some extent biomass.
And in the Dutch case?
Yes, so in the Dutch case, let's say for bio-based applications, we are, let's say, technology neutral. So that I mentioned the sugar beet, it was more as an example, because it's a crop where you can produce a lot per hectare, and so farmers see this as an interesting opportunity. So it's technology neutral. When we look at renewable energy, our support system is also technology neutral. So we also have a tendering system where we have auctions, and where actually solar competes with wind and competes with biomass for the same budget. And our minister will choose the cheapest options first. So that's how we go through the system. So we'll also always support the cheapest options first. And wind, solar, and biomass, they compete with each other. So we really try to implement it that way. But of course, as you mentioned, there are certain limitations coming from other areas, so not just financially. For example, for wind on land, it is cheaper, but it's difficult because of the public to realize these projects. Wind on sea, it's more expensive, but of course, but that's, you have the space, but that is more expensive. So it's always these, let's say, different trade-offs that are there, and that shape the markets for these renewable energies.
Let me challenge both of you on your answers. First you, and you get the chance in a second. First you, because a lot of your presentation was about this cascading, that it's good if it's first a table and then it's a biofuel, which is not at all technology neutral. You prefer it to be a table, you don't care about the climate impact, but you care about what it was before. Why?
Because we want to, let's say, get most of the value out of the material. So I would not say that we prescribe it, that it has to happen that way, but it should be let's say an automatic, let's say, follow-up of the economic system. Yeah, so that, let's say, the waste materials are available at a lower price than let's say the virgin material. So that's why you use them for a second time, maybe for let's say board material, or you burn it for energy. So it's really to create the highest value out of the biomass. That's why I'm saying cascading is important. It's the biorefinery approach. It's cascading in time, that results or leads to cascading in value. So it's an economic principle.
And in the German case, it was hard. I don't think we all managed to go through all the parts of your wonderful chart there, which just shows that people who think that the Energiewende was decided on a whim, they're so wrong. This is very well planned. But one little tiny thing that I'd like to ask you about is, when it says gas, is that renewable, or are you moving towards natural gas, which is often claimed?
You saw gas there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the aim is very clear that we are looking for an energy market entirely renewable without gas.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that for the part there's kind of a bridging technology which has to be there, and then gas is of course preferable to other means.
How do you make sure that that bridge is short?
Well, we try to make it through the incentive scheme, targeting the different fields, which I forgot to say is, of course, you have no problems in Germany to also work in geothermal or something. You just don't get an incentive scheme. You know, you can still, it's a free market of energy. You can set it up as you want.
Let me ask the audience here, how many have somehow invested in solar panels, either on your own or in your municipality or in your work? That's, yeah, there's some slow hands here, but we are reaching something approaching to 20%, and the reason you did that is to a large degree thanks to what you did with Energiewende. If you got the price of solar down for the rest of us, and the whole world is thankful, I want you to know that. But I'm worried also that maybe you paid too much. How do you know, because you had the very long-term stable arrangements, does that mean that you end up paying too much and the rest of us reaping the benefits?
No, I think, I mean, first of all, you know, it was a domestic-driven, it was a feed-in tariff over 20 years. It was guaranteed, and as you can see, 800,000 different households or utilities profited of it. The customer, you know, the German customer was ready to pay for it, and I think, and he continues to be ready to pay, despite, of course, that everybody wants to have cheap energy prices. No, I think it was an internal decision, and we're very happy that the prices fell so dramatically that today it can have an added value in the fight against climate change.
We at Forest, the think tank that I run, we published a report about Energiewende, and we're very far from the only one. So many did, and I'm sure that also you, when you set up your system, you looked at what you liked and wanted to copy from Energiewende and what you found that you could perhaps improve on. What's your view on the Energiewende?
So indeed, in the Energiewende, so the EEG in the past, let's say you used, let's say, a fixed tariff for all the different technologies, and so they were guaranteed for 20 years. So that indeed made it costly. So we are also using a feed-in tariff nowadays, but we are, let's say, making this available through auctions. So that's why we can come to lower prices. So we think that's more cost efficient. But guaranteeing, let's say, a price for a certain amount of years, that's really something that is required in order to realize the market and have investments. And because this was always one of the main complaints also in the Netherlands from people who develop renewable energy projects, that they could not, let's say, trust the government because of elections, changes, and so on. So they need a stable environment so that they can invest in this. And that's realized through this, let's say, feed-in tariff that we have through the auctions.
Thank you. Let's have a few questions. We'll have a few in a row. We'll take yours and then move straight to the next. Yes.
You both mentioned about biomass, of course, because it's important for transport fuels and commodity chemicals to produce whatever to replace fossil fuels. What do you do in your countries? Because biomass is not endless. You mentioned that you can use it up to 14% or something, and in Netherlands it's also. Have you already gone to the new technologies, for example, synthetic biology using C1 raw materials to make these things without biomass? I saw photanol you mentioned, and that is was a nice example. But do you have this kind of more advanced plans in your countries?
Thank you. We'll keep that in mind, and we'll take two more questions, one down there and then to the other side of the aisle.
Hello, my name is Nella Barends. I'm from Arizona Chemical. It's a world's largest pine chemical company, and I hear a lot of discussion on bioeconomy around energy. But I think as a chemical company, biochemical company, we are curious to see, do you see bioeconomy more than an energy? Do you see it to be bio-based products or chemicals? And if you see, How do you see creating, from a governmental perspective, a level playing field when you can make lots of things for the bioeconomy from the same materials? It could be fuels, it could be chemicals, it could be materials. How could the governments create a level playing field so we ultimately get this sustainable bioeconomy?
Great question. We'll have a third one, and then we'll take the answers.
Hello, my name is Anna Sörensson from the city of Östersund. I wonder if the transportation sector is included in this region with 100% RES.
We'll start with the last one because that was clearly directed to one of you, and then the other two to both of you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Even the Energiewende, of course, includes transport as well, and it's part of, as you see at the climate protection plan. But in the communities, it is not included as such 100%, because it's there. It is aimed first of all at the energy sector.
Great, and then we can move straight on to the question about synthetic fuels and also a more level playing field for all kinds of the bioenergy, of the bioeconomy. Sorry.
Yeah, yes, there is a limit for biomass potential. In Germany, the biofuels are politically not always easy. So there's only a limited amount. The government said a limited amount can go into biofuels. You saw the cascade. We kind of, I have the feeling, stop it at the food part level. And yes, there's a lot of research going on, but I think we're not as, to my knowledge, we don't have anything comparable now, even though there is large sums of research going in this area as well.
Yeah. Okay, so starting with the, let's say, the resource side and how to expand it. So from the IEA Bioenergy together with ARENA, we have been looking at, let's say, the biomass resources. And what we see is that when you, let's say what we are using at this moment in the world, it is about 50 exajoules. It's equivalent to energy. It's about 50 exajoules. But it's not used very efficiently. So that's the first thing. A lot of the resource can be used more efficiently. And we can produce also more biomass, as I mentioned. And there's a lot of unused lands, or there is forests that can be better cultivated, agricultural land that can be better cultivated. So we could double, yes, we could double the amount of biomass. But then we come to limits, and then we have to look, of course, also for other resources. And then the aquatic biomass, or like synthetic biology, they come into the picture. And so a lot of experiments are going on in that area, but you have to keep in mind that it is also, it's more expensive. Yeah? So what a plant or a tree does in nature, it's a cheaper way of producing biomass than when you produce the same chemicals, yes, in synthetic biology. Yeah, so that's, of course, when you can be competitive, yes, let's do it. It's a free market. So that's let's say that's the way I see it. Yes, so first try to use, let's say, what is available, and then, of course, add to that the synthetic biology. Then, of course, for which market are we producing? So that I'm coming to the question from the lady from the Arizona company. Indeed, as I mentioned in my presentation, we are looking for, let's say, valorization of biomass. So this is about products, chemicals, and energy, and it's in this sequence and also in this combination. And the way we can stimulate that is to have one level playing field for all these applications, and that means that we have to reward them by the, let's say, the CO2 or the carbon that they reduce. So at this moment, for example, in Germany through the Energiewende, or in the Netherlands through our support system, we're only supporting renewable electricity. We are not supporting bio-based materials or chemicals because they are reducing CO2. So that's something we have to change in the system, that they are also rewarded, and they are rewarded in an equal way. And then it's a level playing field for bio-based material applications and also for energy applications. So that's actually the proposal, and we have to see that we can build this into, let's say, the new energy directive that's coming forward from the European Commission.
We have time for one more question, and preferably from this side, because we've had all the questions from you guys so far. And then we're curious, yeah. That's maybe the closer you are to the door, you want to be fast to leave so you can go out and do your contacts and make the business. Well, otherwise, let me wrap up by asking you. So you made your 2050 plan, which was, I was also there in Marrakesh, very impressive, and Sweden and a few other countries also did. The US, we'll see what that's worth. And you also made up at least medium-term targets. But in the near term, within this election period or before we meet the next time, what are the most important steps that you're going to take?
Well, we have elections next September. You can see already you know, Angela Merkel has just re-entered the race for a fourth term. In her program, at least, the Energiewende is such that it is not in the forefront of her program, but because it is just such it's an ingrained element now on public policy. She wants to follow up. We want to move with the auctions, very similar, into the market, so that eventually renewables can enter freely the market without incentive scheme. This is where we will follow up. I have seen no difference. Even we have a grand coalition right now, and all parties in parliament support this. So there's this big, strong popular support. The parties support it. So I don't see much difference than to follow the existing plans right now. I don't think it will be a big debate in the election campaign. I think there's a large societal consensus on it.
Yes?
Yeah, so in the Netherlands, we will follow, let's say, what has been agreed on the Renewable Energy Directive, so that's 14% renewables in the year 2020. But we also have an agreement to achieve 16% in the year 2023. And our, let's say, government is committed to, let's say, follow that agreement. But what I see as a new element is that, let's say, so the bio-based chemicals and materials, they get an increased attention because there is quite a pressure from, let's say, industry also to produce these new chemicals and open up this new market and also get a reward for that. So I think that's really, let's say, something new that's coming up, and I still have to see, let's say, how our political parties will pick that up, because we have election already in March next year. So also for us, it's a question, well, what's going to happen after that, and what will then be the new policy.
Kees and Hans, thank you ever so much for sharing these experiences with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And